My name is M. Greiner, and I'm a singer-songwriter from Canada. The voice can take you on adventures. I've had a few. And in this book, I talk about touring with David Bowie, and I also talk about some actual singing tips. And I also talk about my journey as a woman in the world, the healing power of singing, raise your voice, change your life, what touring with David Bowie, single parenting, and ditching the music business taught me in 25 easy steps. And I hope to see you soon. Welcome! I'm here with my friend Joe Elliott, and I'm in Canada. He is in
Dublin, Ireland,
Yes.
to be sure.
You look very cozy in your chair. And
Yeah, this thing won't stop rocking. I can't lock it. So I'm afraid it's going to be a rock and roll interview because I'm rocking and rolling in this chair, you know.
Totally. We're talking because my book, The Healing Power of Singing. Oh,
Yes.
you see my
Looking
light?
forward to a signed copy, by the way.
Yes, it's coming out. It comes out soon, but it comes out in the UK in October. And I'm talking to all my favorite people who have voices. So, you know what? I met you, and I don't really know when you knew that you had a voice. Can you take us back?
I don't think I ever did. To me, a voice is a subjective thing. You know, when people talk about singers, they tend to, from my era, if you like, they tend to talk about people that are insanely accurate at it, like Lou Gramm from Foreigner, Bryan Adams. Steve Walsh, the singer from Kansas, unbelievable pipes. I mean, the guy could sing like the phone book, you know. Steve Perry from Journey, Paul Rodgers, Bad Company and Free. To me, that is blues-based great singing. But then there are people that interpret lyrics who people then go, well, they're not really singers, like Bob Dylan, Mick Jagger, Alice Cooper, Ian Hunter. And then there's people that fall in between, like Bowie or David Essex and stuff like that, you know. So I've been singing since I came out of the womb, pretty much. Secondhand memories or phantom memories or just stories I'm told by relatives. But when you go and visit your relatives at Christmas after you've had a bit of success, and they go, oh, yeah, we always knew you were going to be a superstar and all this nonsense. Because you used to crawl to the radio when you were a baby and you'd try and join in with us. I'd crawl to the sound, apparently. Mm. And then as we demonstrated in the video for Me and My Wine, when I was about probably 4 foot high, the vacuum cleaner just looked like a microphone
yeah,
on a stand. So I used to sing into the vacuum cleaner, pretend to be whoever was in the charts when I was 5, so 1964. It would have been the Tremolos, the Kinks, maybe just the Beatles for sure. I mean, apparently they were the first band I ever latched onto. I don't remember, but I was singing Love Me Do when I was 4, so I'm told.
Wow.
You know, so I was always a bit of a singer. When I was about 8 years old, I wrote my first song because about 6 months previously, my mom had bought an acoustic guitar from one of these catalogs that you get through the door and you pay a certain amount of money a week. Mm-hmm. And she taught herself to play. I don't think it was the Burt Weedon Play in a Day book, but it was something along those lines. Mm-hmm. But she taught herself to play a lot of this, what I'd call like Americana folk, mm-hmm. Pete Seeger stuff and what have you. And you know, she'll be coming around the mountains, these kind of old classic folk songs from America from, a century ago, more than. And I was fascinated watching her fingers on the strings, and she would play and I would join in and I would do the harmony. It just came natural to me, you know. And then when I said I wanted to, I want a guitar, seriously, and thank God they did. My parents said, well, learn to play and we'll get you one for Christmas. So I had this incentive to learn to play my mum's, and then if I could play that, they'd get me one, and then I could play along with mum, you know. Mm-hmm. So I learned the classic 3 chords, D, C, and G, and realized that there's 1,000 songs you can play, pretty much, you know. Mm-hmm. And then when you get to throw in a B minor and a an F or whatever, and you're off, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was 8.5, I wrote my first song, and I've still got a tape of it, actually. And I had a voice. I mean, it hadn't broken, but I sound like this angelic little kid, but there's a tune there, and there's melody. And so I knew how to hold a note. But when my voice broke, it all changed. So I was in the school choir when I was about 10, doing all the high stuff, you know. And then when my voice broke, I just kind of stopped singing. I started listening. And like most kids from my generation and my neighborhood, we were so fly by night with everything that we did. Like Wimbledon's on, so what do? We're all tennis players. Then the Open's on, so we're all playing golf. Then the football season starts and we're all playing football, soccer. But I always at night came back to the record player. It was always my kind of retreat after the fact of daytime activity, if you like. And so, you know, I was always writing songs, even when I remember it was just after I first discovered Ziggy and things like School's Out and $1 Billion Babies by Alice Cooper. I wrote a rock opera when I was 14.
No way.
You know, I wish I still had proof, because I had reams of paper with all these lyrics about, I think Alice had a snake called Katrina. So I wrote a song about a girl called Katrina. And then there was a song called The Acid Bath, which was obviously some kind of like deranged tribute to Acid Queen by Townsend of the Tommy, which again was another. So I must have had a neighborhood friend that had a couple of, you know, more grown-up albums than I'd been used to listening to, and Tommy would have been one of them. I just kind of became more of a collector of music and a fan of it, and an obsessed. Yeah, I was obsessed with it. I really was. It took over my life from 1970 onwards. I think it became center focus for me, everything. And that was all through, I'd listened to all this music that wasn't mine, if you know what I mean, which is the Beatles and the Stones and the Who and the Kinks and the Small Faces. And I was really familiar with it. But I couldn't afford to buy albums. So I only heard other people's when I had the opportunity round at their house. But I had singles, and I mostly bought ex-jukebox because they were, you know, like cost 10 pence. And the hole knocked out, and you had to have a thing, and yeah, it was crazy. But it was things like Sugar Sugar by the Arches and Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep by Middle of the Road. All these stupid pop songs, and some pretty cool stuff as well. I remember I had a Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young single, and I had Hedgehoppers Anonymous, It's Good News Week, and just a few other little whatever was just in the tray that particular week when I went to the local record store with like tiny amount of spending money that I could afford to buy whatever records with. But once we got a telly, and once we got a color TV, and all of a sudden, all these artists that I'd seen maybe little bits of on telly in grey suits, all of a sudden I realized they weren't grey. It was just black and white telly that made everybody look grey. And then I saw T-Rex, and it was probably Ride a White Swan, first single he had a hit with. And then Hot Love. And then it was off, like at the starting blocks with Get It On, or Bang a Gong as it was called in North America. And there's Bolan with purple silk loon pants and sparkly jackets and rouge and glitter on his cheeks and his hair and a feather boa that was bright pink. And this guitar, and it's like, and all the kids dancing around him on top of the pops wearing bright knitted sweaters with big stars on them and stuff. It was mind blowing to see. And luckily at that age, at 10 or 11, the sound matched the vision. So it was told, this is why glam rock can only have come out of the UK. All the latter day glam stuff that was born supposedly on Sunset Boulevard was a pale imitation of the original. The same way that a lot of American punk just doesn't really hold a candle to the Clash and the Pistols and the Damned, etc. Even though kudos to Iggy Pop, of course. But yeah, so I had this thing when I was just worshipping this box in the corner of our room every Thursday night at 7:30 when Top of the Pops came on, and you weeded through all the dross, the Tony Orlando and Dawn, Tiger Yellow Bloody Ribbon and all this stuff, Knock Three Times, which were probably decent songs, but at 12, it was mom and dad music, you know. I'm waiting for Come On Feel the Noise by Slade, or All the Young Dudes by Mott, and, you know, Bowie and Sweets, and eventually Queen. And there was, you know, but Slade were the big ones. But it was from 71, it was T-Rex, and it was Sweet and Mud and Susie Quattro and Slade. And then Bowie came along in 72, and then it just grew and grew and grew. But I was still at this time just a listener and just an observer. Never really thought about singing until I joined the band. I mean, I played guitar, I played a bit of drums. I had a drum kit in the attic that I got for £5 from a jumble sale. And of course, you know, the thing about drums is the neighbors just can't deal with it, you know. So you're putting tea cloths on everything so you could get the drums to sound like Gary Glitter, but you had to play real soft. So I ended up playing drums to things like The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, because it's just tippy-tappy drumming.
Right.
But when I still had my mom's guitar, which I could still play a bit, but I only knew these chords. I was never going to be Phil or Vivian, who'd sit for 8 hours a night in their bedroom learning to go widdly, 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 widdly. It wasn't my thing. I just wanted to accompany my voice. But I kind of stopped doing it until this fateful day when I ended up joining Def Leppard, and then I started writing again and writing. I'd either write into Pete and Sav's riffs or write into my own backing tracks that I would come up with. And then I realized that the voice that I had, that was nice, gentle and beautiful when I was 12, 6 years later, it died and gone to heaven, you know. And I was this 18-year-old kid now that was being encouraged to sing high in full voice, and I had no idea how to do it. So I was kind of flapping around in the dark. But you listen to our first album, and you as I've said many times, you peer through the curtain of uncertainty and somewhere in there was a great band, but the singer was definitely lagging behind a bit, you know. But the enthusiasm to do it is what kept me my job, I think, and the fact that I had a driving license. So when I came to doing gigs, I was the only guy that could get us there, you know.
See, that's so amazing, because I write in my book about when I sang with Bowie, when I had my record deal, my voice wasn't at the top of its game. And I kind of hear you saying that, you know, I mean, I'm sure people would disagree, but maybe you say your voice was finding its way in the first record or whatever. Enthusiasm. Is there anything else, though, that you think elevated your voice, like as you went to the next record or as you toured or whatever?
Well, yeah, when we started out, you see, you don't have any scheduling issues. You're a bunch of kids in the Spoon Factory. We've got this rehearsal room that we're locked in. We don't have to keep clearing out like when people rented the top room in a pub. They'd have to clear out when there was a wedding on. We had this factory room that was emptied, and we set up and we just locked everything away. We could go there for like 2 hours, or we could stay there for an entire day and do whatever we wanted. But we would rehearse after. We all had day jobs, so we all would rehearse after work, and we'd stop when it just became like the right time to stop, put the kettle on, make a cup of tea. You never really lost your voice in those situations because you weren't doing it for a living, and you weren't doing it so intensely that it would cause a problem. So we'd be doing a few songs. The first song we ever played was Suffragette City, just so we, you know, we're back to the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon and Bowie here, but we just needed something to play, and it was the one song that all four of us, because we were a four-piece to start with, one song that everybody knew. And funnily enough, it was the Earl Slick version, because Pete was a fan of Earl Slick more so than Mick Ronson. So we were playing the David Live version of Suffragette City. And I could sing that because it was in a lower key. It was in a singer's key. When it came to experimenting with my voice, I just sang whatever melodies I could get to work over the chord sequences I was given by Pete and Sav, or myself if I was writing, or when Steve joined, Steve's stuff. And that's what the first album, On Through the Night, is. It's me left to my own devices to come up with harmonies. I did most of the harmonies. Occasionally me and Sav did the unison, but most of the vocals on the first album, most of them are all me. trying to do Queen stuff, and I just didn't have the voice to do it.
Hmm.
When we come to the second album, we've got Mutt Lange producing. Now this is a game changer. And he was not just going to let me, he would, okay, then let's see what you got. He'd be like, well, that's not going to work. And I had no idea what that learning curve was going to be like until I got pushed into the deep end. And that was, you listen to me on High and Dry compared to On Through the Night, it's two different people. And I had literally a couple of weeks to just get my head around how this is. I watched and I listened to what he had to say, but not until I got into the control room and stood in front of the mic and tried to sing, he went, okay, let's go again. And what was wrong with that? No, not more. Okay. And then so it was, but it's Mutt Lange. So, you know, we chose him as a producer for a reason. So we're not going to fight him over his reasons for wanting to make us a better band. So I became more of a shouty singer on High and Dry, which I wasn't a great fan of, but I could see why he was doing it. It was this 1981 and we were British. And I suppose when we were talking between sessions, like in the cafeteria or whatever, our love for things a little more raw than a REO Speedwagon or a Styx or whatever was coming out. And he was like, okay, and you know, our love for AC/DC and Queen, and Fred had a hard edge to him when he wanted one. And loved all the punk stuff, you know, whether it be Strummer or Jones singing or Lydon for the Pistols, or Rotten as he was at the time. It was like using that excuse to like, well, look, I can't do Lou Gramm. I'm not Lou Gramm and I never will be. So let's not go there, you know. I've got to be me, I suppose. And it took a while to find who I am. I don't think we really got there for many, many years, but the journey was fun because I was the willing student. So I would go and try something. And if I pulled it off, I go, wow, I really didn't think I could do that. And then you get this unique sound because I'm not just doing it by numbers, I'm doing it by the book. It's literally this untrained singer taking direction from either Stevie Lang, his ex-wife, who was a fantastic vocal coach, or Mutt himself, and just feeling our way to some uniqueness. Because I might not be the best singer in the world, but like Ozzy or Alice, as soon as I open my mouth, people know it's me. I've always said, like, whether Ozzy's singing for Sabbath, for Ozzy, you know, his band, like Blizzard of Oz, as it were, or if you put his voice over the London Philharmonic, the second you hear the third word, you go, it's Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah. Or if Alice Cooper does it, you know, or certain other singers have got that. Iggy Pop has got that. Lou Reed, they've got that thing where that's more important. The identity is more important than the accuracy, if you like. It's a style. It's style. And style is so much more important. I mean, there's no better example than Mick Jagger. He's fronted one of the biggest bands in the world for 50 years, being this guy that just, everything. And he's fantastic. I mean, that's not a criticism. It's an acceptance of the fact that he is a much better singer than anybody gives him credit for, but he's not Paul Rodgers or Lou Gramm or Brian Adams or Steve Walsh. He's Mick Jagger. And that's a better thing for the world, it really is.
I just want to ask you about your high, I won't get too technical, but it's just the geek in me that's like, you know, your speaking voice is so low and so rich, and then you can like reach the highest of heights. Like, what is there a little secret to that? Or is that just you?
Seriously, if there was a secret to that, I probably would bottle it and sell it. I have no idea how I have got such a pretty deep, resonating talking voice. It's not quite Nick Cave, but it's pretty low. You know, It's not squeaky like John Anderson from Yes, who sounds like he's just took helium out of a balloon. But I can do that when I'm singing. Now, I don't know how, but my top range is really clean. So when we were doing all that high stuff, if you tracked me up, and a lot of it is tracked, especially like the choruses of things like Photograph, it's tracked, you know, I mean, because it was a pop song. And essentially I'm not really a rock singer. I'm really not. I'm a pop singer. I can sing things like Rock On by David Essex, as we did on the covers album, so much easier than I can sing, say, Led Zeppelin stuff. I can do Brian Johnson quite well. Because of working with Mutt, I know how you do that voice. But you put a certain amount of throat distortion on that falsetto at the top, It's a very similar technique to what Axl Rose does when he's doing the high bits on things like Sweet Child of Mine. I couldn't do it in full voice. There's a singer you obviously will heard of called Daughtry, who covered Photograph he sang it on a Carlos Santana album. And he hits the I Don't Want Yours in Photograph in full voice. And I'm like, wow, how on earth can you even do that? It's just not in my DNA. I can do it a fifth down, but I can't do it in that register. But I can hit all the high stuff, and I can seamlessly come out from chest into middle into head as my current vocal coach splits the voice into 3 sections. Current vocal coach being a gentleman called Roger Love. He came to the camp when Vivian came to the camp. Okay. When Vivian joined the band in early 92 or late 91, we didn't announce it until about 3 days before the Freddie Mercury tribute show in April 92. We just finished his album Adrenalize, which had got insane backing vocals. And we knew that Vivian sang a lot more than Steve did. So there was an opportunity for us to actually make that a big part of the follow-up tour. And he suggested, well, I've been working with a vocal coach because he'd been singing lead on some stuff. He'd been demoing. And he said, he mentioned Roger Love. And so we all went, well, okay, let's get in touch. So we all went down to Ibiza for a month into a club owned by Phil Carson, who owned Atlantic Records. The club had closed down. And he said, you can have my club for a month. So we set up in the club. It's great. Just locked up. Yeah. And we stayed in this hotel, and in the mornings, we'd all do a vocal session with Roger, an hour each. And then we'd go down to the rehearsal room and see how it turned out. And I mean, everybody from our road crew to the band themselves would all be hearing all of us and looking at each other going, Jesus, is that really you singing? Because what he did, the one thing that Roger does, which is fantastic for me at least, he says, I'm not here to teach you to sing. I'm here to teach you not to lose your voice. I'm not going to try and change your technique. I'm not going to try and improve your vibrato or give you vibrato or tell you to stop falling off the end of your words, because that's your sound. Because that's what we do. We don't hold notes. You only have to listen to like Sugar. Even the backing vocals do that. Sugar on me. It would sound ridiculous if we held it. It would sound like a church meeting. A
choir, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be horrible. So he's like, I'm just here to strengthen your voice so there's less cancellations. And we've had plenty of them in the past, mostly because of me. If you don't, the guitarist gets flu, you can still play. And a singer gets flu, you really can't sing. And when a singer is thrown into a schedule situation where you're going from an opening act, so you're doing 45 minutes a night, which anybody can handle, to headlining overnight to 90 minutes, which stretches to an hour 40, 6 nights a week, all of a sudden your body just goes, hang on a minute. And managements and agencies, they don't know how our voice works. They don't care. They're just there to set up the money and get the gigs rolling. And I went through that, and that was my biggest problem. And I never got the chance to heal. So we'd blow out gigs and cancel 10 days worth of shows. And in a 10-day break that was coming up in 3 weeks' time, we'd shift the shows to there. So then there's no more breaks. And then you just have to kind of figure out, how am I not going to lose my voice? And, common sense says, well, after you finish the gig, go to bed.
Right.
Get in bed. But it's not easy to do when you're 26, 27, you've got a #1 album, and you're full of beans and you want to go out and have fun. But I had to temper all that. It was really difficult, especially on the Hysteria tour. It was like everybody's out having fun, and there was no Netflix, but I'm in watching whichever TV channel there was, or listening to CDs and stuff like that. But hey, you either want to be a singer or you want to be a partier, and I wanted to be a singer. Right. But cut back to 92, or forward to 92, and Roger Love, in that month that we worked with him, gave us so much more energy and confidence to be able to go out on stage. We played for nearly 3 hours on that Adrenaline tour because there's no opening act, and we did 241 shows. And we didn't cancel any because of my voice.
Wow. Okay. So what did he teach you that changed the game?
Well, first of all, it was actually quite simple. It was everything that all vocal coaches do. It was scales and sounds. And like teaching you what the words were for certain sounds. I never knew that when you go away, that's called a diphthong. When the A turns to an E, that switch over thing. And it's a great word. But yeah, it was just the technique teaching you strength. You see, I tended to cheat by missing out the bits that I couldn't sing and jumping straight to the high stuff and just pulling the mic away.
Right.
And what he did, he gave you the confidence to actually keep the mic there and actually sing that note that you were always shying away from.
Right.
So we just started off with dead simple stuff. Like he'd do this like 10-minute exercise where he called it low larynx. And like when you do it like that, you do the sound. So you're going like as opposed to going but we do the low larynx stuff and it would just be all the vowel sounds, and we would do this for 30 minutes, and we do the low larynx for about 10, and then he would do the regular sounds for about 20 minutes. And that's it. That was all it was. And I would notice that in the mid-range, where I was like maybe a bit, it would like rip. It started to strengthen over the month. It started to come in clean. And so he would make us do these things where it wasn't always da, 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 da. Sometimes it'd be an octave and a half. So it'd be da, 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 da. And then other times it was just 2 or 3 notes. But as we were doing the octave and a half, you'd go through, you'd get to the octave of the first note, and it wouldn't be in head voice anymore. It'd be in middle. So that you could go to the half octave again, and that would be head voice. So you were actually engaging all 3 voices in that one exercise. And I couldn't do it like most people. It's like riding a bike. You can't do it at first, and then once you get used to it, then everybody's riding around with that. Even they're not even holding the handlebars anymore. And he was really very cool about the fact that a vocal coach is pretty, it's a niche job, but he was really cool about the fact that he did this month with us. And then he says, I've done you all the tape. And he did every one of us a cassette that we took on the road. And it worked. And then he did an updated version of it about maybe the first one was 92. So the new one would have been maybe 2002, I think. He just did a new one for us. We just got him back in to do let's see how we are when Roger's actually in the room. Right. See if we're improving. Again, he was a better vocal coach 20 years later as well, because he said to me many times recently, he says, I wasn't that good in 92. I'm like, so you were good enough for me, pal. Right. And he's been a lifesaver for me because 2014, 15, I think it was, I got double pneumonia twice in 18 months. And my voice absolutely just went. I mean, I was really surprised I ever got it back. I really thought it's gone. This is it. I'm going to have to just retire. We were on the rock and roll cruise early 2000. Was it 15 or 16? I can't remember. And we did a sound check and I went, oh, my voice is gone. And I couldn't. Then we did this acoustic performance the night before our electric performance, and I barely got through that. And I was apologizing and going, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on here, but I've had pneumonia, but this has always bounced back after everything I've ever had. It bounced back. And it came to the sound check of the electric show. And I said, guys, I can't do it. I absolutely cannot do this. Now, luckily, the boat's full of other bands. So we had this very unique 45-minute gig we did with Kip Winger, Andrew from Vivian's band Last in Line, and Eric Martin from Mr. Big, singing with lyric sheets and stuff, doing fooling. And while I stood at the side of the stage, I would introduce them on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Def Leppard. And then I'd walk away going, and that's not the weirdest thing I've ever done in my life. I don't know what is. So, but I had to take it with good grace because it wasn't like I was drunk and being stupid. I was literally ill. Luckily, after the boat, we had a 5-day break before we started this tour with Styx. So 5 days will be great. I'll work with Roger and the rest will do me good and sit around the pool and blah, blah, blah. And I did all that lot. And we got to the first gig and I did the sound check and it was even worse. It was really bad. So being the guy that I am, because I've never been one to shy away. I was the one that walked into Tesla because they were third on the bill, walked into their dressing room and walked into the Styx dressing room and apologized and said, sorry guys, but the tour's off. And they'd all just flown into Florida. And, you know, fair play to them. They all just gave me a big hug and went, you know what? At least you didn't run off and leave us in the lurch. I mean, I had to face up to Tommy and JY and the guys in Tesla and say, I can't do this, you know. So we cancelled when we did reschedule eventually, but we postponed. And I went away to work with Roger Love for, I don't know, 4 months, every single day.
Wow.
Because I'm obsessed like that. And I was desperate. He said, I went to see a vocal doctor, a specialist, ear, nose and throat specialist. And the guy in Dublin, bless him, he's an old man. He took a look down my throat and he said, well, he said, if it wasn't you, because he knew who I was, he says, I'd tell you to retire now. He says, because you've got a frozen vocal cord. And what happens is when you're trying to do like a E, they're not coming in the middle. This one is moving and this one's stuck. So this one is overcompensating, trying to get over there. And it's just, this one's, he said, that they don't ever unfreeze. I'm driving home from 10 minutes from here, back from the clinic, thinking, well, that's not exactly great news, is it? You know? Yeah. So I rang Roger and he said, bullshit. He said, that's absolutely nonsense. He said, it's a muscle. He says, it just has to be exercised and lubricated. So I didn't have anything to cut out of my diet because I already don't do dairy, except for the odd piece of cheese, but I don't really do dairy. And so we just started a whole brand new vocal lesson. We tossed away the old tapes from 92 and 2000 or whatever it was. And he just said, okay, let's see what you can do. And he just gave me something really low and just work my way up. And essentially I'd be starting off in F or whatever. And I would be able to get up as far as C, maybe. And he'd say, okay, well, you know, we're not going to go. He'd just test me on the eye stuff to see where the cracks were and where there's no sound at all. And he'd go, okay, so because he needed to know what he needed to do. So I had to sound like, you know, a hyena or whatever. I needed to sound awful for him to know what was wrong. Yeah. And again, there's no embarrassment. I mean, most of the time you just burst out laughing because it's like, it doesn't even sound like human. It sounds like something from a Saw movie, you know. But he would figure it out and he would go away and he'd make notes and he'd come back the next day. I was like, I've got this plan. And he'd get certain sounds going and there'd be things that would resonate well with a vocal cord. Instead of just doing like vowels, he'd have me doing sounds like rrr or grrr or brrr. And we found the brr one wasn't really much use because it's just making your lips flap. But the grrr and the drrr, it really does make this bounce. And anyway, long story short, I worked with him for 6 months, I think, and I went back to my original ear, nose, and throat specialist, the old guy, and he took one look down put the camera down my throat, and he physically jumped back, and he went, "What have you done?" And I said, well, before I tell you that, you tell me what you see. He says, that cord was frozen and you were covered in little pimple stuff down there. Not nodes, but it was like spotty. He says, it's completely clean. It's like brand new baby skin. And that cord is like a brand new rubber band. Wow. He says, I've never, ever come across this in my career. Wow. And I said, that's because you've never worked with Roger Love. And can I make a respectful suggestion that the next time a singer comes in and you say to him, you should retire, don't say that ever again, because you could put somebody with a rope around their neck that's got, you know, a weak constitution in that department. I said, send them to this guy. And I gave him Roger's card. Wow. I've never seen that ear, nose and throat specialist since, because there's no point. I'm sure. But Roger really built it back up so that when we went back out in the summer, even though I was still working with him all the way through that summer, it wasn't perfect, but it was getting better. But by the end of that run, it really was getting better. And I mean, I did cheat. I was taking anti-inflammatories. And by the end of that tour, I took a massive dose of a steroid, which I hate doing because it just plonks weight on you. but it just cleared it up. And I've ever since, for the last 5 years, I've had my voice has been the best it's ever been.
Yeah.
And that's all down to working with Roger Love, he's not just a vocal coach. He's like a shrink as well, because he'd stop for 5 minutes and they'd just talk about last night's game, just to take your mind off it. So it wasn't like full on. So you just talk about stuff and he'd say, "Oh, I've got to tell you about this restaurant I went to last night." And then you'd take a break, and then you get back into it. And all of a sudden, by just even taking that little break, he'd have you do the previous exercise and you go, "Oh, that note you didn't hit, you just hit it."
After my separation, which is a very stressful time, I had to sing like in a play where I sang 30 Joni Mitchell songs. I think the connection between, the singer and the vocal coach is so important, because my vocal coach he saw how sad I was, but he was also like, you can hit all these notes. Like, these are all notes that you can hit. And then you just need someone who's got some professional know-how and can see what's going on in your life to kind of be there. It sounds like Roger I didn't know about any of that, and that's amazing.
Nobody did, because he wasn't one of those things. I don't do Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Going, "Hey, I'm having a vocal lesson." It's like one of those things that people don't need. I have no problem talking about it now after the fact, because it's public record that the tour got postponed. I lost my voice. I got it back. I remember I did the last Down and Out tour in 2014. My voice was just shot. It was only after the tour finished I went to see my doctor, and he said, "Well," he says, "there's no wonder." He says, "You've got pneumonia again. You've had pneumonia for the last 3 weeks." I don't know how they do that. I always thought, like, you can tell the age of a tree by cutting it and carrying the rings, but how they can backdate when you got pneumonia is beyond me. But they do it with blood tests and God knows saliva tests and stuff.
Wow.
It wasn't lifestyle at all. It was more just bad luck more than anything else. And so for this to happen later on in life, you're thinking, well, it's only happening because you're getting older, and it's just logical. Everybody's voice gets deeper when they get older, and it just starts to go. With the exception of Sammy Hagar and Steven Tyler, most people's voice don't sound the same as when they started out. I mean, Bowie's the greatest example, mostly down to the sitars, I'd imagine. But he went from being able to sing like, A Life on Mars in whatever key it was, to having to drop it down massively for when he was doing it like 40 years later. Still a great singer, but not in those registers. And other singers have done the same thing, where they have to change all their melodies because they can't hit the highs. I didn't want to bail that soon. I saw it as a challenge, as to wanting to say people to leave the building going, "Wow, he's still got it." I went through a period where I didn't have it, but it wasn't because I was ill prepared. It was because I was ill. And I learned the difference, and I acknowledged the difference. So I didn't ever feel guilty about it, because it wasn't lifestyle. It wasn't out in the clubs. "I said another bottle of champagne" at 6 a.m. Then you're gigging again the night after. It wasn't that. It's just schedules. We changed our work ethic. I said to management when we started working with Mike, I said, "I don't want to do this anymore where I'm always on the back foot. So from now on, we're not doing 3 in a row. I'm not doing any more 3 in a rows. 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off. There's a finite amount of gigs that we're ever going to do. And it doesn't matter whether we do them over 20 or 24 years. It'll be the same amount of gigs. And if we decide to keep going beyond that, we'll be able to, because I'm not burnt out." There's other singers out there that do 1 on, 3 off. I'm not going to name names, but there are. I wouldn't want to go that far, but 2 on, 1 off. And then everybody else bought into this method of thinking anyway, because they all realized that recovery made us do better shows. So the backing vocals, they got better. Everybody's playing got better. Everybody's just had more energy, because that third show is a killer. You see all these whinging football managers about their players in their teens and their mid-20s can't play 2 games a week. We used to have to do 6 shows a night and travel between each one of them and still be amazing. It's like, it's not good. It's impossible. So, we went for quality rather than quantity when it came to shows.
By the way, this has been so awesome. Like, we never get to talk about this. And I know I was emailing you in like 2015, 16, and I knew you went really quiet for a little bit. Like, you've been through so much, and I won't rehash every tribulation your band has gone through because we all know. But would you say that, well, would you describe that time as one of the hardest times when
personally, yeah, not for the entire band. When Rick lost his arm, it was traumatic for everybody. You know, band, him, his family, our family, fans. When Steve died, same thing. When I lost my voice, it was more internal. We knew about it, and we had to announce that it happened, but we didn't. There wasn't like a big mourning period where people do, oh, they've had to cancel. Move on, you know, then the next news is like somebody else's tickets says, oh, players will go see Aerosmith instead then. And everything was fine to all. There'll be a few fans that worried, but it wasn't as traumatic as the Steve situation or Rick's. It was traumatic for me more so than those guys, I think. Because Rick, once we knew he was going to get better, you were relaxed. Right. Steve was just, you just knew it was going to happen one day. So when Steve died, as I've said many times, it was more like your granny dying. You know it's coming because she's old, you know, and Steve had problems. So it was just going to happen. And you mourn it, and it was horrible. But this was so internal. For me, it became a bigger issue because I couldn't get away from it. When I had the other stuff, you got people sharing the pain. With this, nobody else can really understand it unless they're singers. And I wasn't about to start crying on the shoulders of David Coverdale or Robert Plant or even you know, say, oh, woe is me, because it was up to me to sort it out. Right. There was only one person that can fix this. And that means getting in the help to get it fixed. I had to be the willing recipient of the help. A lot of people are stubborn and they won't do it. I was like, no, I want this back. I'm not done. I'm not done, you know, and what's happened since then is some fantastic tours with Journey in the stadiums, the Down and Outs album, which won Album of the Year in Planet Planet Rock radio station and stuff. By the fans, by the way, you know, and some great performances on that one. Never mind the songwriting's got nothing to do with my voice, but great performances from a vocal point of view. I thought on that record as well. And then there's more to come with Leopard down the road. So I wanted my voice back, and I wanted to, you know, and it's generally a much better voice than it was, I think, because especially with the new material that we write, you write to suit, so it changes and it gives you just different flavors as well. But it was terribly traumatic at the time. I mean, you internalize it so much that it would have been dead easy to just go to the bottle, you know. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't. I mean, occasionally I did, you know, but not to the point where it killed me, you know. And you sat there in such solitude that it's like you have to have some ridiculous, crazy inner strength to just want to get up the next morning, really. And I just had that, like, I'm not done. I've seen other people fall off and quit. And I kept seeing this finish line that I'm not done. And that finish line is the day I die. And I'm not ready for that yet, but I'm still going to run like hell to get there and try and get as much and overtake people on to come first, if you like, you know. I wanted to be a winner again, and I had willpower to do it, and I had a great team around me that were patient.
The question Ronan, my 11-year-old, asked was, if you weren't a singer, would you be as happy?
No, I don't think I would, you know.
What would you be doing is my extension of that question.
That's the fantastic question, because if I hadn't have bumped into Pete Willis on that fateful summer's evening in 1977, and I bumped into him because I missed the bus home. I walked into the newsagents to get, I don't know, a pack of gum or read the Thursday, you know, rock magazines, and then came out and saw the number 9 bus going up the hill going, oh, no. And I had to walk home, but I didn't even walk the bus route. I walked an alternative route, and I don't know why I did. But as I'm going up, Pete Willis is coming down. And I just bought this 30 quid Les Paul copy from a junk shop, and I'd seen all these punk bands, and I thought, well, I can do that. and say, hey, you play guitar, Pete, don't you? Because I knew he was a friend of a friend.
Hmm.
And he said, yeah. I said, hey, you want to get a band together? And he said, well, we kind of got one. We're looking for a singer. And I just went, I'll do it.
Wow.
And that was it. And then he said, all right. So they all came to my mum and dad's house. They were very impressed with my record collection. And I didn't sing a word for 6 weeks, but I was in the band, because I was tall and enthusiastic, So if I hadn't have bumped into him, I could probably still been working in the factory that I'd been in for 4 years. And now being, fat, bald and married with 2.3 kids and a smoking habit and drinking beer all day. I don't know. This band gave me this opportunity to be who I am. I don't know whether a different band would have come along and I could have been a keyboard player in some Human League type band, because that was the scene in Sheffield at the time. I certainly was never a guy like Bowie that was in the lower third and then the King Bees and then he was Davy Jones and the this, that and the other. And then he was David Bowie. He just never stopped being David Bowie. I didn't become me until we were a band. There was no me beforehand. So I don't think I would have been putting adverts in going, singer available for band that sound like AC/DC or meets Queen or whatever. I really don't know what I'd have done. I've always said if it wasn't soccer or football, I'd have been a bank robber. It's a fantastic question because there is no answer.
Right.
That moment, when you think back of however many other brilliant moments in the world there's been where people have just networked by accident into a fantastic sliding doors moment. It's insane the things that have happened to us to where I'm to get to this very day. If I look back and go, God, just think if we'd have just turned left there instead of right, I would never have met you. I would have never met Christine. I would never have, all these things. It's like, it's bizarre. It's
it really is
scary. The journey, how you just take it for granted, but it's actually a miracle every single turn of it, So to answer his question, extremely happy to be the singer, as much as it's traumatic at times to be the singer, because you're always the guy, whenever there's a TV show, I go, oh, the band are going to lip sync, they're going to play, but you have to sing live.
right.
Oh, really? Thanks, man. You're carrying the weight, and there's this psychological thing about being a singer where you do all the press because supposedly you're the important one. It's like, not particularly, but okay, whatever. So you do all the press and then you got to sing and then you've got no voice left. So it's like, but I take it all with a pinch of salt. It's all just a humorous situation that we've got under control. And I love being who I am. It's been an absolute joy because I was first and foremost just a music fan. I had albums by Rod Stewart and Bowie and T-Rex and Sweet and Slade and just wanted to be them. And I am. In fact, became bigger than most of the bands that I used to like. I mean, Rod Stewart probably, you could argue, not so much, but certainly bigger than T-Rex, especially in the States. Sold more records than a lot of artists that I look up to as like being a pivotal part of who I am. Mott the Hoople, for example, Ian Hunter, sold more records than him, but I'm not more important. I don't think I'm more important than he is. He's extremely important to me. And it doesn't matter whether he's sold gazillions of records or he just made really good ones. Is more important, So, but yeah, I could well still be living in Sheffield, and the factory got destroyed. It got shut down. It got demolished. So I would have had to definitely go work somewhere else.
Oh gosh,
it's like the Spinal Tap thing, hairdressing. Could have done that.
Right. For people, like for me, the pandemic has been really transformative. It's put the spotlight back on what I'm meant to do. And I love that you're saying, I love what I do. And there's like such a happiness that radiates from you. And everyone says this, right? Maybe it's like a contentment or joy. Maybe joy is a better word. Like for anyone who wants to start their creative thing now or later in life or whatever, I think it's really encouraging to hear you say like your voice is better now than it's ever been. And I've seen it, like, I'm always coming to the shows when they're on. What do you say to someone who wants to start something later in life that just is talking themselves out of it all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I would say you've got to follow your heart. If you think that there's plenty of people that don't make it until they get, I mean, it depends what you consider old. I mean, in the 1969 70 period, Ian Hunter was 30 when Mott the Hoople released their first album, and they had to keep it on the wraps because it was a no-no.
Wow.
Yet, cut to 40 years later, Katie Tunstall was 31 when she put her first record out.
Mm-hmm.
Oasis were probably pushing that when they were starting to take off. There's a difference now. Age doesn't matter. 60 is a new 40 and all this kind of nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you've got it, you've got it. It doesn't matter whether you're overweight. It doesn't matter whether you're small or tall or skinny. If you've got something and you think that other people might enjoy it, you should never talk yourself out of it. It's whether you get the look of people thinking you're the real deal when you do something, And we went through career highs and lows. I mean, the first album came out in 1980. It was a top 20 hit in the UK, and then we just disappeared through bad press and stuff until 1987, when a different bunch of people bought into the band. Ones in 1980 didn't come back. They'd gone forever. This was their younger siblings that came along and embraced us, and they're the ones that have stuck with us ever since, But I've always been a go for it kind of guy. You've got to go for it. The simple rule is you're better off trying and failing than not trying and wishing that you had, because you'll wish you had for the rest of your life. And that will be a bigger disappointment than trying and failing, because it's okay to fail. I fail every day at something, but I just get back up again like Chumbawamba did, That's the difference.
That's amazing. What you say about being willing, you said that twice. You said that in the early days, and you said that when you had your vocal trouble. To me, that's half of it, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's not a talent. It's a headspace. It's a frame of mind. You can be the best singer in the world, but with the worst attitude, you're not going to get anywhere. Or you could just be a real Joe average singer that's got maybe a decent lyric. But if you really want it, people will buy into your ethos, I think. They'll see through to the soul that's trying his best to sound good enough to be accepted, I suppose.
Right.
And that's why I think people like Morrissey and Nick Cave have got a huge following. And there's people out there that could sing the phone directory and they probably played in front of 3 people in a Holiday Inn bar. Because it doesn't matter whether they've got fantastic pipes, they haven't got anything else. But you've got to be willing to try. I was a late bloomer. I was. I mean, I know that sounds silly because I was in the band when I was 18, but I was like treading water and I pulled people along for the enthusiasm, but from the talent point of view, I was not contributing as well as I should have done. I should have been 6 out of 10 see me after school on my school report for my contribution I always did it because I had to. It's like, you got 15 minutes and then you come out and it's fine. Why didn't you do that yesterday? Now I'm ahead of the game. I'm writing songs as you know, I'm writing songs all the time. And I sit there noodling away on a guitar, noodling away on a piano. And again, another thing that you know about me, I'm 62. I didn't really start taking the piano seriously until about 10 years ago.
Right. And you're a brilliant piano player for anyone who hasn't heard you play. It blows my mind.
I play piano to write. So I'm not trying to go this kind of stuff.
Right.
I was challenged to play piano because a friend of ours that grew up in Sheffield with us, Dave Kilner, who was a DJ that came up at the same time as us, passed away, and his wife organized a tribute show at the Sheffield City Hall. And she said, there are 3 songs that you and Sav have got to play. And he said, one of them is Animal. I said, okay, that's easy. The other one is Tie Your Mother Down, My Queen. I said, okay, that's easy. And the third one is Love Lies Bleeding by Elton John. And I just went, you got to be kidding me. I had 4.5 months to learn Love Lies Bleeding on the piano.
Wow.
And I worked it out pretty quick. I went, okay, this song's 11.5 minutes long because every section happens twice. So it's a 5.5 minute song glued together in the middle. So once you get the lick once, you just play it again, and then you play it again, and then you go to the next lick and you play it twice. And I just sat there listening to the record and working it out. I knew the rudimentary what notes were where, but I'd never really done it. And I got to the point where the first time I ever played that song in public was the version that you can see on YouTube, live from the City Hall in 2011, and it's genuinely live. That's no awesome. Cheat.
Wow.
And then that gave me the clue. I went, Jesus, if I can play that, imagine what I could do. So then I'd start learning, Ian songs or Mott songs, or then I started writing, and we have these songs that you and I are going to one day put out where we changed the role, didn't we? When
we really did, yeah.
Lyrics, and stuff like that. So it's like everything's backwards way around. As are my chord sequences. They're all very European, Bowie-esque, Jack Brel, mad stuff. It's very not Liberace or Elton, stuff. It's definitely deep, and that just comes from me going, well, I'm a singer, and that's what I do. I play guitar. I'm never going to get any better at the guitar. It's as good as I'm going to get, and it's fine because I play okay rhythm and I can finger pick, but I only play the guitar because if they need me to fill in on acoustic, I can do it. I do it on now. I do it on two steps because I wrote the song. So I didn't write now. I wrote two steps. But I can play, I can do the acoustic bit that the guys can't do because they can't get to it quick enough. So we have two electric guitars and me on acoustic, and we get through the song. That's all I need. I don't have a desire to play lead guitar, not at all.
Yeah,
I have a desire to write with these instruments, the piano and the guitar, so that I can sing. But the piano just blows my mind as an instrument. It's so everything. It's quiet, it's loud, it's rock, it's opera, it's everything in between, classical, jazz, whatever you want to call it, blues. You can do everything on it, and it leads you in places, because I don't know what I'm doing. I go to places that school musicians go, you can't do that. Well, why not? And I've had two people tell me, namely Ian Hunter and Elton John, say, as soon as you know what all the black notes do, you're done for. Because there's nothing left to discover.
Right.
I'm still discovering, you know what I mean? So that's why it's such a joy. And so I'm a great example of late bloomer when it comes to, say, the piano. I love playing the piano now. I get on it all day long and learn Tiny Dancer. Or I just learned to play Quicksand, even though it's a guitar song. The music, I started playing on the piano. It's like, this sounds pretty cool.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to let you go. It's been so awesome to talk to you and see you.
You too, my dear.
I miss
Absolute
you so
pleasure.
much. Can you just
I can't believe we're actually doing this and we're not drinking.
I know. What's happening?
Stop drinking, right?
I have. What the heck, right? I'm going to have to switch to apple juice backstage.
Is this a permanent thing then? Or you just...
I think it's going to be permanent. I really actually feel a lot better not doing it. And that's a whole other convo. But what's coming up then? When is the stadium tour rescheduled? Should I know
Yes,
that?
it's rescheduled for June of 2022.
Okay.
So fingers crossed that goes ahead. It looks like he will, but look, you don't, this day and age, we don't know what's going on with the virus. It's changed. It's been a game changer, but we haven't let the time go to waste. We've been writing. We definitely put the time to good use. That's so awesome. That when we go out next year, we haven't wasted 18 months just sitting around. I will say, I've had the best time being at home because I never really get to be at home this long.
Yeah.
And that, like most people, we've ended up renovating, we've ended up alphabeticalizing things better than they were, cleaning bits, getting rid of stuff, hanging out with my kids instead of being Skype daddy. I'm actually seeing them in real life,
That's awesome.
Which has been great. But that also gave me the opportunity to be more artistic because once I know that they're settled down watching Scooby-Doo, I can disappear for 3 hours and do stuff,
Welcome to my world. Yeah.
It's been wonderful to be able to sort out things that have just been shoved into a dark corner sorted out for another day. The other day came, and that was the pandemic, which gives us a clean start. It's like ground zero from an energy point of view. It's awful that so many people have died, But at the same time, people die every day of something or other, and it doesn't make the front page of every newspaper, and they're all sad. It's just it's been shoved in our faces by every network for 24 hours, and it just grinds you down. And it's been a case of like using that as something as a launch pad to go, no, not going there. Not going to write songs about the pandemic. Just not going to do it. You know, I'm a joyful person. We trade in escapism. That's what we do. And as much as we can touch politically here and there with Gods of War or White Lightning and stuff like this, we're here to entertain. And it's given us the opportunity to hit the reset button, tidy up a lot of back catalogue stuff, find things that we'd forgotten, and reinvent them and bring them back to the table so that we've got some ammunition for when we are free and clear to get together and do stuff.
It's awesome. Well, you are one of my favorite people in the universe. So thank you.
Right back at you, my dear. Right back at you. And, I look forward to sharing apple juice with you from now on then.
Yeah, it sounds very rock and roll. Okay, well, thank you.
Take care of yourself, my dear. Love you, Em. Be good.
Bye.
Bye, honey.